Welcome to Deep Dive Film School. I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palter.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us at all the places and spaces that people
find good media. That's right. You can check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes.
All right. Let's get into that one scene from the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yep.
We're doing the opening montage here. We've done one other montage in these. I think it was for Amelie.
Yeah.
And it kind of had some similar stylization stuff.
Yeah, like an introduction of sort of like some of our main characters.
Yeah, for sure. And so this is kind of like the intro into the movie. But you're the one who chose this. You know, there's not really any context that I can give other than this is kind of the opening montage of their family, their history, their lives up to this point. And, you know, he kind of tells this story like a book. So this would be the prologue to the first chapter.
Yeah. And I feel like that it's now a pretty tried and true Wes Anderson trope that we know. He loves these sort of nesting boxes of stories. Obviously, is a huge fan of Roald Dahl, obviously is a huge fan of that sort of 1970s, 1960s storybook style.
He brings it to life.
I think that it's just like, it's so obvious in watching this now. You know, this is his third movie. It's so obvious in watching this now that, of course, I mean, I think at the time we were all like, really? But in retrospect, it's so obvious that he would become a stop motion animation director because all of his movies feel like dioramas. They all feel like little models, right? Even when they're not. Even when you're like, oh, this is a real building on a real street in New York City. It feels, from the way he films it, like it's inside of a little shadow box.
No, and you're absolutely right. Anderson thrives on a budget. Right, he thrives on.
That's a really good way of saying it.
He finally gets that his money after doing Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. He proved that he can make those movies. Now this is his first time with a big ensemble.
Yep,
all A-listers pretty much.
Oh yeah.
And he really gets to play with his style more than ever. And to your point, he had, you know, this was like the first movie where people started referencing other movies as Wes Anderson.
You're totally right.
Style, right? Because of how he makes this movie, how every little piece of carpet and wallpaper and like even
picture frames on the wall,
everything has its own place. The detail of what he does with all of this, down to when they're telling the story about Margot and she loses her finger and they cut away to her glove being altered with the finger gone. It's just like the stupid little shit that no one else cares about when they're making movies. That's
where he thrives.
That's where he thrives.
I love that you said that way, because I was trying to articulate this and I couldn't quite wrap my mind around it. But what it is that, yeah, it's like this little ephemera that other people don't necessarily care about, but also it's that there's a story or there's a part of the story that's being told, or a person in a moment of dialogue says a thing, and then we cut away to, and they call it knolling, right? KNOLLING is when you have like the overhead shot and all of your little GI Joes have been perfectly lined up and they're filling every space, right? That's called knolling. And he loves to do that, whether it's a drawing or if it is little things lined up, or if it's just like props kind of set up in a particular way.
Frame.
Yeah. And that, but they are in place of either B-roll of the thing that the person's telling us about. He almost never shows us that. Or B, a reaction shot of a person being told a thing, right? So you use the example I would use, which is, you know, later Margot disappeared on her own for 2 weeks. She never told anyone where she came from, but she did show up later with half of one of her fingers missing, right?
Yeah.
And
your Alec Baldwin.
That's my Alec Baldwin. How is it? And then it cuts to the glove. You're like, well, where did she go? We'll never find out.
No,
how did you miss part of her finger? We'll never find out. But the little pink glove with the little bit missing, I was like, that's it. That's what he does. And even when it's like in Rushmore of like, oh, Max belongs to a lot of clubs, it then cuts to a montage just of single setup shots of him with his radio flyer and him with his, chess club and all these different things. It's like, it's such a particular visionary style that really did not exist
I know.
before him.
It's true. And like you think it did in storybooks, but not on
Yeah,
not in a movie
thank
picture.
you. Yeah, not in a movie. Yeah, in storybooks it
But
did.
you think of Grand Budapest, which is probably his greatest movie,
Yeah.
and how balanced and linear that is,
Mhm.
right? If you look, like everything is matched
Yeah.
perfectly. Ben Stiller does the same thing in his movies as well, but like this was the beginning of that, right? And his he this is where he was able to play with balance and framing and really started to shine. He has all these playful colors. He has all this handmade art, all this great pop music.
Yep.
You know, like the little details that he makes his own, like I was saying earlier.
And you're right in that of it being a children's book, because doesn't it all, did you read Richard Scarry books when you were little?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, there was like all the little animals that lived in the town, and there was Lowly that was the worm that drove around in a little apple car. But it's like those characters were always like kind of lined up like that, or it would be like, here's the town, and then the names of all the buildings are written with little arrows next to all of the buildings, right? And there was this like ephemera that felt so safe and warm in that way. And I feel like that's, hearing about the Dalmatian mice and seeing like the old banker's bags that he's putting his money into, and he's got his little tie rack.
Somebody make it.
And it just all feels very lived in and historical. It's a fake history of a very specific time and place.
Yes. No, that's a great way to put it. I love that. And I think because of all of that stuff he does, and that he loves that stuff so much, and there's so much eye candy, and this is a movie you would call whimsical.
Yeah.
Right? Like
100%. I wrote that down. I wrote down whimsical.
You like that adjective. But no, I think it actually fits here. But the underrated part of all this, because there's so much eye candy, is the amazing writing. Like, if we really look at why his movies are so good, it's because they're fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Look at Bottle Rocket, look at Rushmore, look at any of his movies. Some of his new ones I'm kind of a little more wishy-washy on, but everything up to Grand Budapest is pretty genius.
And you're right that the writing creates a lore, a folklore that we can move within.
Yes.
That feels, this is about a genius group of kids,
For sure.
who have been given every possible luxury on the planet. And then, and this is another great Wes Anderson thing that is like, because you're right, it's somewhere between, there's the whimsy, and the whimsy is so important. And then we cut away to Royal, of Gene Hackman's character, every time breaking the spell by doing or saying something
He's
shitty.
so good. He's such a wonderful
Why are you in your pajamas? Do you live here now? Right? It's just like these little moments like that just are continuing to move along who this character is, in spite of all the amazing whimsy around him.
Exactly.
Right?
And he's so good at world building that within frame one, you're already like invested in this world, right?
Yep.
Like you're already like Fantastic Mr. Fox. Within the first 5 frames, you're like,
oh yeah, I'm
in.
sold.
I'm
yeah.
in. George Clooney. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you're somewhere between like, championship, child prodigy, tennis player, but then also his dad takes him to the dog fights.
That's right.
Right. Or his dad shoots one of his kids with the BB gun,
He shoots Chaz.
Chazzy, there are no teams,
The guy. One of my favorite scenes or parts of this scene is when he comes up and asks Ethelene, which is Angelica Houston's character, one of her best, and asks her for $187, and she's like, "Go get my checkbook," and he's already
written it out.
She doesn't even ask. She just signs it.
Yep. I need $187. Well, and it totally is, and it's very funny that, like, not in spite of all of this, I think all the depth of the story and the way that it rolls along. Them hiding out in a museum is literally from a children's book. I can't think of the name. If you remember this, like, it wasn't even a young adult. It was like for like 5th graders. If you remember what the book is, like, comment below. But like all of that, like, lived in treasure. But then there's this interesting aspect that's like, I love this premise that as a child, and especially as like a child prodigy, as a child genius, which mom writes a book,
Family of Geniuses,
that the world is full of endless possibilities, right? But
except for him.
Well, but I mean, yes, but I also think even if you just think about the idea of the now that you live in, right? The now that we're living in now is very different than 5 years ago or 10 years ago, let alone when we were children, right?
Sure.
And so to be like Margot is a famous playwright by the time that she's 9, it's like, well, where the fuck can she go?
Doogie Howser shit.
Like, how do you, yeah, I mean, but it really is, right? Like things change. Like you have this idea of like, this success will never end, a family of geniuses. And then the very end of this narration is like, they will all grow up to be these failures. Like they will never live up to this potential.
Yeah.
And for that to be the first 7 minutes of the movie is so fascinating to me because it says so much about just life, right? That like these kids thought they had it made to the point where like reporters were falling over each other to interview these kids.
Yeah.
And like nobody fucking remembers them now.
I mean, anyone with fame that young is doomed.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, look at half the celebrities that have been, Michael Jackson, someone who's so famous where they don't even know what reality is anymore.
They
like
can't even,
you can't live up to that, right? And to the point of the movie here, I mean, people are attempting suicide.
Yeah.
Everyone's depressed. Like
the siblings are trying to sleep with each other.
Yeah.
It's all gone downhill. But it's a fascinaning premise. And
she's adopted his adopted daughter.
That's fair. But it's all unloaded so fast at the beginning. What does he say? He's like the play.
Oh, didn't seem believable. Just a bunch of kids in animal costume. Hey, what are you getting so mad at? It's one guy's opinion.
Dad's opinion on her birthday.
On her birthday.
It's so good.
Didn't seem believable.
Yeah, exactly.
What an asshole.
One man's opinion. It's so good. It just sets the tone for everything. It really, really does.
Yeah, no, and then after all of this, we kind of lean into more of his whimsy. We get the credit cards of everyone in their, doing their breaking the fourth wall thing. And off we go to the rest of the story.
Just a fantastic film, but boy, what an opener. And I don't even think that I realized the first couple of times I watched it that it was Alec Baldwin doing the narration. I think I was too swept away. I also didn't realize until it really hits the hook that it was Hey Jude. Like I think it took me a while to
I was going to mention that, they have Mordecai flying off at the end of this.
Mordecai. He also keeps a hawk on the roof named Mordecai.
What a niche little family,
That's
right?
so good.
But yeah, I agree. Once it kicked into the no,
like,
that stuff,
man.
I knew there were just genius, man. All aspects. There's not like a aspect that he's weak on, and this is just a great example of that.
And it just is really, it's him. You're right that it's him with a budget for the first time. Mm-hmm. It's also him realizing he can do this big ensemble thing, and he's firing on all those cylinders.
He gets to do all creative freedom. He gets whatever he wants to do, and I get reeling in certain artists, but certain artists you got to let them do their vision, or it's not gonna. You're ruining it by being a producer.
Yeah,
so
totally agree.
Wonderful movie. And great scene to talk about. Next week we're going to continue our Movies About Movies Festival. We're going to do the classic Steve Martin film, Bowfinger, with Eddie Murphy.
Multiple Eddie Murphys.
That's right.
God, I can't wait to watch this movie again. I haven't thought about this for a while.
This is a movie about movies. But
Fat Chubby Rain. Chubby Rain.
So much silliness in this movie, but also it's great. It's so good. It's so funny. So please join us to hang out for Bowfinger and the rest of this festival. Please like and subscribe. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Those are our most popular channels, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, you guys.